What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. In these turbulent times of uncertainty, where one day the world holds its breath in anticipation of peace deal, then the very next day the war in Ukraine rages on like nothing ever happened. The stage is set for a conflict that is as much about perception and mind games as it is about power and sheer military force.
Now, though, the Kremlin has said in the last half hour that the content of the talks will not be made public. It comes, of course, as fighting continues as well on the ground in Ukraine.
Recent months have witnessed whispers of a potential ceasefire, a diplomatic pause that, on the surface, suggests progress in a conflict long defined by its endless momentum. Yet, behind the veneer of high-level negotiations and cautious optimism lies a multi-step strategy designed to manage both internal discontent and external pressure. This is a period when every word, every gesture from the corridors of power is packed with intent and double meanings, open obviously for interpretation by every person. Leaders speak in ambiguous tones, hinting at a future where fighting might momentarily cool, while simultaneously fortifying the state's defenses against an onslaught of economic and ideological challenges. The discussion about freezing the war is not merely a call for peace. It is a tactical recalibration, a means of preserving power amid relentless sanctions and an ever-widening economic problems. And who is better to deliver these messages to the people other than the Russian propaganda itself? If they can convince the entire nation that the invasion was necessary in order to protect the interests of your country inside another completely different country, then they can do, well, anything else with the same ease, right? Right? Will it require flip-flopping your previous narrative completely and turning major enemies into friends? Probably yes. But when has it ever stopped them? Even during the war's peak, the narrative and the goals of this so-called special military operation have been changing 2 to 3 times per week. If people forget things so quick, why not push it one step forward and present your arch enemy, America, as the best buddy ever? That's exactly what the propaganda machine did and continues to do as we speak. So today, let's talk about the ridiculous Russian propaganda, how it changes the narrative whenever convenient for the regime of Putin, and how it thinks that it can completely twist the facts, hoping the people will not notice. And unfortunately, the saddest part is that most people prefer to ignore these changes, deciding to adjust to new realities, because staying in your comfort zone, even though surrounded by lies, is always so much easier than confronting the harsh truth. The notion of a ceasefire has begun to circulate among diplomatic circles like an elusive phantom, whispered about in hushed tones and carefully worded statements. On paper, this prospect promises an end, or at least a suspension, to hostilities, a chance for negotiations to initiate a new course. Yet, as sides submerge deeper into the nuances of these discussions, it becomes apparent that there is no genuine step towards reconciliation. Instead, it is a tactical pause, a carefully orchestrated intermission in a play where every act is designed to maintain a balance between hope and control. That is precisely what the Russian propaganda has been doing since the beginning of the invasion. It is just temporary, they said. It will only take 3 days, 3 weeks, couple of months, no more than that. There are no conscripts fighting, only professional soldiers who signed a contract, so don't worry. All that was to create this fake feeling of safety and hope among Russian people, that this war will be over sooner rather than later, and unless you sign up yourself, there is no way you will be forced to risk your life. All that, as we all know, turned out to be a one big piece of lie. And so, more than 3 years later, enter one of the first real attempts at peace talks initiation. Behind closed doors, representatives from both sides engage in a game of subtle signals and guarded concessions. These interactions, often publicized as breakthroughs, serve more as a strategic reorganization than a realignment of goals. The rhetoric employed is deliberately very ambiguous. Every concession is countered by a veiled threat, every offer of compromise shadowed by the assertion that the state must remain ever prepared. There is an undercurrent of inevitability in these talks, a recognition that while a temporary pause might ease international pressure, it does nothing to alter the underlying calculus of power. The state's posture is one of controlled defiance, an acknowledgement that any suspension in the conflict is merely a prelude to renewed intensity when conditions are most favorable for its ambitions. This diplomatic dance is further complicated by the presence of multiple third parties whose agendas rarely align. High-level negotiators exchange pleasantries and cautious proposals, yet the real decision-making power remains within the government buildings of Moscow and Kiev. In the shadows, the war is managed by bureaucrats and strategists who see every negotiation as an opportunity to tighten the regime's grip on both the narrative and the nation. For them, the ceasefire is less about ending the bloodshed and more about buying time to recalibrate military logistics, stockpile defenses, and prepare for the next round of sanctions or domestic unrest.
Both sides can move grain, fuel, and start conducting trade again in the Black Sea. And then we'll talk the line of control, which is the actual front lines. And that gets into the details of verification mechanisms, peacekeeping, freezing the lines where they are, and then, of course, the broader and permanent peace, which will be some type of discussion of territory for permanent peace and a lasting peace.
Well, in Russia, at least, that is the potential domestic unrest. As these talks progress, the public is left with a dual message. While the language of peace is being spoken, the instruments of war are never far from reach. The ceasefire in this light emerges not as a promise of salvation, but as a pause, an interlude in a broader symphony of controlled aggression and calculated endurance. And if it means siding with your alleged nemesis, so be it. By the way, we will speak about this particular tactic in more details in just a couple of minutes in one of our next chapters. In the shadow of high-level diplomacy and economic sanctions, another insidious battle is waged on the very streets of the nation. A battle for human lives and exploitation of vulnerability. The state's recruitment strategies have evolved far beyond the simple call to arms of yesterday. Today, they represent a labyrinth of promises, coercion, and subtle manipulation engineered to extract every ounce of commitment from a populace already battered by hardships and disillusionment.
Замечаю. Я думаю, в принципе, здесь ничего плохого нет. Потому что все-таки контрактная служба – это лучше, чем срочная. Я думаю, многие с этим согласятся, когда люди профессионально подходят к своему делу.
The modern recruitment campaign is a study in contrasts. On one side, it is a dazzling display of financial incentives, promising immediate debt relief, and a prospect of a better future. Bright numbers flash on billboards and digital screens, each figure a siren call to those drowning in debt or despair. Yet, behind this unreachable opportunity lies a dark side of exploitation. Contracts are meticulously drafted to obscure hidden costs and penalties, ensuring that the benefits promised are but a fraction of what is delivered. In many cases, recruits find themselves ensnared in agreements that strip away their autonomy and leave them with the legacy of unfulfilled promises. And yes, as some of you might have heard, these contracts are impossible to terminate. They are auto-renewing until there is no more war or until there is no more person. What makes this recruitment drive particularly nefarious is its ability to adapt to the shifting contours of social vulnerability. In regions where economic deprivation is prevalent, the possibility of a quick financial gain is very irresistible. In urban centers, where the pressure of modern life converges with a sense of stagnation, the promise of upward mobility becomes a call to action that so many people were waiting to happen. Well, there it is, they say. It is now or never. Time to make some money. Once in a lifetime opportunity, because, well, I'll never make so much money working in a factory anyways. The state deploys a sophisticated array of digital tools and data analytics to target these vulnerable populations with precision. Social media platforms, once heralded as instruments of free expression, now serve as battlegrounds for psychological manipulation. Algorithms filter information to expose individuals to tailored messages that blur the line between patriotism and desperation. In this environment, every signature on a recruitment contract is less an act of civic duty rather than a desperate bid for financial salvation, a decision made in the shadows of systemic betrayal and social inequality. The human cost of this modern recruitment strategy is calculable. Families are torn apart, communities left grappling with the absence of those who have been lured into a cycle of exploitation. The promises of prosperity give way to a stark reality of long, grueling service and a constant state of uncertainty. For many, the act of enlisting becomes an involuntary submission to a system that thrives on the commodification of hope. In the corridors of military bureaucracy, the individual is reduced to statistics, a number, a pawn in a larger game where the rules are rewritten with every new policy. This system of recruitment, with its carefully calibrated mix of incentives and hidden costs, serves as a microcosm of a broader social decay, a reflection of a state that values control over compassion, coercion over community, and more. It is a vivid reminder that the true price of survival in this era is often paid in the currency of human dignity. In the age where the digital realm is as contested as any physical battleground, the fight for truth has taken on new dimensions. The state's propaganda apparatus, once confined to television and print, has now morphed into a sophisticated network of cyber tactics and narrative warfare. Here, the struggle is not fought with bullets or bombs, but with words, images, and the relentless push to shape perception in real time. And it does not stop just at intensifying the belief of the people of the state's narrative. Instead, it can be changed, morphed, and adjusted according to the regime's needs at any time. At the forefront of this digital onslaught are online platforms that serve as echo chambers for state-approved narratives. The once simple messages of valor and sacrifice have evolved into complex digital campaigns that use even memes, viral videos, and coordinated social media blitzes to control the public discourse. Cyber psychology professionals, operating with the precision of digital architects, craft messages that resonate on an emotional level, tapping into the collective psyche of a society steeped in both pride and desperation. Unlike traditional propaganda, which could be easily dismissed as outdated, these digital strategies are dynamic, adaptive, and relentlessly persuasive. A key aspect of this cyber campaign is the systematic suppression of dissent. Independent voices, alternative narratives, and critical analysis are met with swift countermeasures, ranging from algorithmic downranking to outright censorship.
It says a Russian disinformation campaign has begun over the airstrikes. We posted this on 10news.com, but apparently there has been a 2,000% increase in Russian trolls in the past 24 hours.
The state's digital guardians deploy an array of tools to flood online spaces with its own messaging, drowning out any hint of opposition. This war of narratives is not just about control, it is about survival. In the media landscape where every click, share, and comment is monitored and manipulated, the battle for truth becomes a high-stakes contest in which the enemy is not only foreign adversaries, but also the collective memory and identity of the nation. That's why reshaping the enemy into a friend is so relatively easy. When you have absolutely zero people on state TV talking against you, well, you are now free to make your own rules of the world's leaders' relations. America under Biden was the enemy of Russia, but once the possibility of Trump becoming the next president became a reality, the Russian propaganda immediately started portraying him as one of old friends of Putin, almost like someone who Putin studied together with in the KGB university and then was fishing in his dacha in the summer 1899. Outrageously ridiculous. Yes, at first, but there was no one on TV to say that these were the lies. So eventually, Putin and Trump became best friends forever in the eyes of Russian people. It became some sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you wanna call it like this. The digital front has then introduced a new level of personalization and propaganda. Data harvested from social media interactions and online behavior is used to create tailored messages that speak directly to individuals' fears and aspirations. The result is a fragmented yet pervasive narrative that paints a picture of inevitable triumph while obscuring the true cost of continued conflict. This sophisticated manipulation leaves little room for nuances or skepticism. Instead, it creates an environment where reality itself becomes a malleable construct, shaped by the never-ending flow of curated information. In this cyber battle, the state's digital operatives are as relentless as they are invisible, weaving a tapestry of misinformation that blurs the boundaries between facts and fiction. The war for public opinion waged in the pixels of our screens has become a defining feature of this era. A reminder that in the modern age, control over information is the equivalent of controlling the reality itself. Well, there you have it, guys. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims on us all they can.